There comes a moment in every person's life that never makes the news. No music plays, no crowd applauds. Nobody stands up and says, "This is the day everything changes." It looks ordinary from the outside. A quiet morning, a long drive home, a sleepless night staring at the ceiling, a walk through empty streets while everyone else is busy chasing another day. Yet hidden inside that ordinary moment is a decision powerful enough to split your life into two completely different stories. Think about a ship floating in the middle of a vast ocean. Move the steering wheel just 1 degree, and at first nothing seems different. The waves look the same. The sky looks the same. The passengers don't even notice. But weeks later, that tiny shift leads to an entirely different continent. Life works the same way. The greatest transformations rarely begin with giant leaps. They begin with one quiet decision that nobody else can see. Most people spend years waiting for life to become easier. They tell themselves they'll change when the money comes, when the relationship improves, when they finally feel confident, when the timing is perfect. But perfect timing is like chasing the horizon. Every time you move closer, it moves farther away. Imagine someone sitting inside a parked car with a full tank of fuel. The engine is running. The destination is programmed into the navigation. But the car never moves because the driver keeps waiting for every traffic light ahead to turn green before leaving the driveway. That day never comes. Life doesn't reveal the entire road before you begin. It reveals the next step after you decide to move. Nobody tells you this. But indecision is also a decision. Choosing not to act is still choosing. Staying where you are is still moving, just in the wrong direction. Every day you postpone becoming who you are capable of becoming, life quietly writes another page of a story you never intended to live. There are people who wake up every morning carrying dreams that have collected dust for years. They once wanted to start the business, write the book, heal the relationship, improve their health, or build a meaningful life. They didn't lose because they lacked intelligence. They didn't fail because they lacked talent. They simply kept delaying the one decision that would have started the journey. The world often teaches us to look outside ourselves for permission. We wait for someone to believe in us before believing in ourselves. We wait for certainty before commitment. We wait for confidence before action. But confidence has never been the starting line. Confidence is the reward earned after taking action repeatedly, despite uncertainty. Picture a mountain climber standing at the bottom of a massive peak. Looking up feels overwhelming. The summit disappears into the clouds. If all they see is the distance, they'll never begin. But experienced climbers don't conquer mountains by staring at the top. They focus on the next safe step, then another, then another. Eventually, what once looked impossible becomes the path beneath their feet. The same is true for every meaningful transformation. Your future isn't asking you to know every answer today. It is asking you to make one decision that your life will no longer be controlled by fear, comfort, or excuses. Everything else unfolds from there. Circumstances can influence your direction, but they never have the final word. History is filled with people who started with less than you can imagine. Some grew up in broken homes. Some faced rejection after rejection. Some lost everything before building anything. What separated them wasn't luck. It wasn't perfect conditions. It was the moment they stopped asking, "What if I fail?" and started asking, "What if this decision changes everything?" The most powerful choices often happen long before visible success arrives. A person decides to stop blaming their past. Another decides to forgive instead of carrying years of bitterness. Someone else decides that today is the last day they will settle for a life that feels smaller than their potential. Nothing changes immediately on the outside. Bills still exist, challenges remain, doubts still whisper. But something invisible has shifted. The roots have begun growing beneath the surface. Every towering oak tree once looked like an insignificant seed buried beneath dark soil. Nobody walking by could see the forest hidden inside it, yet the seed had already made its decision. It wasn't trying to become a flower. It wasn't comparing itself to other seeds. It simply followed the design placed within it. Your life works the same way. The moment you decide to become the person you were created to be, the invisible work begins long before the visible results appear. And that is where every extraordinary story truly starts. Not with applause, not with certainty, but with one silent decision that forever changes the direction of a human life. Most people believe their future is being written by the economy, by luck, by the family they were born into, or by the opportunities they never receive. It feels convincing because circumstances are loud. They demand your attention. They remind you of every obstacle, every disappointment. Every reason why life seems unfair, but beneath all that noise is a quieter truth. Your life is shaped less by what happens to you and more by the decisions you make about what those moments will mean. Picture two people standing in the middle of the same storm. The rain falls equally on both. The wind pushes against them with the same force. One person curses the weather, sits down, and waits for someone to rescue them. The other pulls their coat tighter, adjusts their direction, and keeps walking. Years later, people call one lucky and the other successful. But luck wasn't the difference. The decision made in the middle of the storm was, life has a strange way of testing us before introducing us to a better chapter. It asks questions that cannot be answered with words. Only decisions answer them. Will you keep moving after rejection? Will you keep believing after disappointment? Will you remain kind after betrayal? Will you choose growth over comfort when comfort feels so much easier? Nobody tells you this, but every challenge secretly asks you one question: who are you going to become because of this? Think about a sculptor standing before a massive block of stone. To everyone else, it is just a heavy rock. But the sculptor sees something hidden inside. Every strike of the hammer removes what doesn't belong. Piece by piece, a masterpiece begins to appear. Difficult seasons often work the same way. They don't always come to destroy you. Sometimes they arrive to remove the fear, the pride, the excuses, and the habits that were hiding your strongest self. The problem is that many people mistake temporary pain for permanent reality. They assume today's chapter is the whole story. They let one failure define their identity. One rejection convinces them they aren't worthy. One mistake becomes evidence that they'll never succeed. But a single page has never determined the ending of a great book. Imagine watching a movie and leaving the theater after the first 20 minutes because the hero is struggling. You would completely miss the transformation. Real life is no different. Every meaningful journey begins with confusion before clarity. Before every sunrise, the sky becomes its darkest. Before every tree reaches toward the clouds, it spends years growing roots. Nobody applauds. Your circumstances are real. They can be painful, they can slow you down, but they never have the authority to decide who you become. That authority belongs to you alone. There are people who have every advantage and still live lives filled with regret because they never made courageous decisions. And there are others who started with almost nothing but built lives of meaning because they decided that their future would not be held hostage by their past. The most important decision you can make isn't choosing the perfect career, finding the perfect relationship, or waiting for the perfect opportunity. It is deciding that no matter what life places in front of you, you will not surrender the steering wheel of your future. A compass doesn't control the ocean. It simply keeps pointing north despite the waves. Your decisions become that compass. The winds of life will change. Some seasons will bring abundance, while others will bring loss. Friends may leave. Plans may collapse. Doors may close without warning. Yet if your decisions remain anchored to your deepest values, every storm becomes a detour instead of a destination. And then something remarkable begins to happen. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? Instead, you begin asking, what can this teach me? That single shift changes everything. Pain becomes preparation. Failure becomes feedback. Fear becomes fuel. Setbacks become stepping stones. One day, people will look at your life and assume the transformation happened overnight. They'll see confidence without remembering the insecurity. They'll admire your peace without knowing the battles you fought in silence. They'll celebrate your success without seeing the thousands of invisible decisions that built it, one ordinary day at a time. Because destiny is never created in one dramatic moment. It is quietly built through countless decisions that nobody notices until the results become impossible to ignore. And the beautiful truth is this. Your next decision can begin writing a completely different future, starting today. There is a quiet kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't announce itself with tears every day. Instead, it settles into your routine. You wake up, go through the motions, smile when you are expected to smile, and convince yourself that this is simply what life is supposed to feel like. Deep down, though, there is a whisper you try to ignore. It tells you that you were made for more. It reminds you that somewhere along the way, you traded your dreams for comfort, your courage for certainty, and your future for familiarity. The hardest prison to escape isn't built with steel bars. It is built with habits. It is built with excuses repeated so many times that they begin to sound like facts. Maybe next year. I am not ready. What if I fail? People like me don't get opportunities like that. Every one of those thoughts lays another brick in a prison you unknowingly construct around yourself. Nobody tells you this, but staying the same has a price, and often that price is far greater than the temporary discomfort of changing. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every single day. At first, it feels manageable. Then weeks pass, months pass, years pass. You become so used to the weight that you forget what it feels like to walk freely. One day, someone asked you to remove the backpack. Suddenly, you realize it was never part of you. It was only something you had been carrying for far too long. Many people live exactly this way. They carry old disappointments, limiting beliefs, broken promises, fear of judgment, and stories about why they can't succeed. They mistake those burdens for their identity. They don't realize that the weight isn't who they are. It is only what they've been carrying. Change feels painful because letting go always does. A tree doesn't become stronger by holding on to dead branches. Every season, it releases what no longer gives life. It trusts that losing leaves isn't the end of its story. It knows new growth is already preparing beneath the surface. Life asks us to do the same. Growth demands that you release versions of yourself that no longer belong in your future. The person who constantly seeks approval cannot become the person who confidently leads. The person who avoids every risk cannot become the person who builds extraordinary things. The person who keeps reliving yesterday cannot fully embrace tomorrow. Real transformation isn't about adding more to your life. Often, it is about removing what has been slowing you down all along. Then comes an even deeper realization. Results don't change first. Identity does. Think of an architect standing on an empty piece of land. Before a single brick is laid, the building already exists in the blueprint. Others see dirt. The architect sees a finished masterpiece. Every action afterward simply brings that invisible picture into reality. Your future works the same way. If you continue seeing yourself as someone who always quits, you'll find reasons to quit. If you believe you are someone who never finishes what you start, your actions will quietly follow that belief. But the moment you decide, I am someone who keeps my word, I finish what I begin, I grow through challenges instead of running from them, your behavior slowly begins catching up with your new identity. Identity is like the roots of a tree. Nobody admires the roots because they remain hidden underground. Yet every branch, every leaf, every piece of fruit depends entirely on what cannot be seen. Strong roots create strong trees. Weak roots create fragile ones. The same is true for human beings. People often chase better habits without changing the person they believe themselves to be. They try to force discipline while secretly believing they're lazy. They chase confidence while constantly telling themselves they're not enough. They pursue success while identifying as someone who always falls short. The outside can never consistently outperform the inside. The beautiful part is that identity is not something you discover. It is something you decide. One simple decision. From this day forward, I refuse to be controlled by fear. I refuse to let my past introduce me. I choose to become the person my future requires. Can quietly reshape every choice that follows. No trumpet sounds when this happens. No spotlight appears. The world may not notice anything different tomorrow morning, but beneath the surface, the foundation has shifted. And whenever the foundation changes, the entire building eventually changes with it. Fear has a remarkable talent for disguising itself as wisdom. It rarely says, don't chase your dream because you are afraid. Instead, it whispers, wait a little longer. It says, do more research. It convinces you that one more month, one more year, one more perfect opportunity will somehow erase uncertainty. But uncertainty is not a problem to solve. It is the price of every meaningful journey. Imagine standing before an old wooden door at the end of a narrow hallway. On the door, in faded letters, is written everything you've ever wanted: peace, purpose, confidence, freedom, fulfillment. But guarding that door is fear. It stands there like a giant shadow, making the handle look impossible to reach. Most people turn around before they even touch it. They spend the rest of their lives wondering what was on the other side. Then one person takes a trembling step forward. Their hands shake, their heart races, nothing about them feels fearless, but they reach for the handle anyway. The moment the door opens, they discover something astonishing. Fear wasn't a wall, it was only a door. It was never designed to stop them forever. It was simply asking one question: how badly do you want the life waiting on the other side? Nobody tells you this, but courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is making a decision while fear is still sitting beside you. Every meaningful chapter of your life begins this way. The first conversation that heals a broken relationship feels terrifying. The first investment in your dream feels risky. The first time you speak up for yourself feels uncomfortable. The first step toward becoming a different person always feels unnatural because you've never been there before. A bird spends weeks inside the safety of its shell. That shell protects it from danger. It provides warmth and security. But eventually, the very thing that once protected it becomes the thing that can kill it if it refuses to break free. Growth requires the shell to crack. Comfort works exactly the same way. There comes a season when what once kept you safe begins keeping you small. The familiar job that no longer inspires you, the habits that once helped you survive, but now prevent you from thriving. The opinions of people who have never had the courage to chase their own dreams. If you cling to comfort forever, you slowly trade your potential for predictability. Life has never rewarded those who waited until they felt completely ready. Readiness is often discovered in motion, not in preparation. The swimmer doesn't eliminate the fear of deep water by standing on the shore. They learn by entering the water one stroke at a time. The same is true for every dream worth pursuing. Then something extraordinary begins to happen. Every time you choose courage over comfort, your confidence quietly grows, not because life becomes easier, but because you begin proving something to yourself. You discover that you can survive uncomfortable conversations, you can recover from rejection. You can adapt after failure. You can keep going even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Confidence is built one courageous decision at a time, and those decisions don't have to be dramatic. They are often surprisingly small. Choosing to wake up when the alarm rings instead of pressing snooze, choosing to exercise when excuses feel convincing. Choosing to read instead of endlessly scrolling, choosing to apologize first. Choosing to forgive, choosing to tell the truth, even when lying would be easier at first glance. These moments seem insignificant, like tiny drops of water falling onto stone. But day after day, year after year, those drops carve valleys through solid rock. Great lives are not built through one spectacular act of discipline. They are built through thousands of ordinary decisions repeated until excellence becomes natural. Imagine a gardener planting seeds every morning before sunrise. On the first day, nothing changes. After a week, the soil still looks empty. A month later, someone walking by might laugh and say, "You are wasting your time." But the gardener smiles because they understand something the observer cannot see. Growth happens underground long before it becomes visible above the surface. Your daily decisions are seeds. Every healthy choice, every promise you keep to yourself, every act of courage, every disciplined morning, every hour spent becoming better instead of becoming bitter, they all disappear into the unseen soil of your future. And one day, almost without warning, people will admire the harvest. They'll call it success. You'll know it was simply the result of choosing again and again to walk through the door called fear and planting the kind of daily decisions that quietly transform an ordinary life into an extraordinary one.